Okay, so we are going to be moving on from linear functions to exponential functions, and we're going to start off by just talking about what an exponential function looks like. So there's three different representations that you're going to be working with this week. So we have the equation, we have a table, and we have a graph. And we're going to just be looking at each one of those representations today. So when we talk about exponential functions and we're talking about equations, the equations of exponential functions have the variable x as an exponent. That's what makes it exponential. Okay, so if I were to define what the equation of an exponential function looks like, we would say variable x is in the exponent. Okay, so that's kind of what makes it look differently from a linear equation. So a linear equation would have x being multiplied. In this case, x is the exponent or part of the exponent. Okay, so then you might be thinking, well, what does that look like as a table? So as we look at a table, what we normally do is we normally mark this table up. So that's what I'm going to do. And maybe fractions aren't your favorite and you prefer to work with integers or whole numbers, and we can do that. I can look down here at this 1/3, 1, 3, 9, and I can look at that and I can tell that I'm not adding the same number, because 1 plus 2 is 3 and 3 plus 6 is 9. So I don't have a common difference. I'm not adding the same number. So if I'm not adding the same number, I can check to see if I'm multiplying or dividing the same number. So if I look at 1 to 3, well, 1 times 3 is 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. So the only question is, does that pattern repeat throughout the whole table? And if we look, if we had 1/81 times 3, and we punch that into our calculator, we would get 1/27. If I multiplied 1/27 times 3, I would get 1/9, and so on. Okay, so this pattern continues to repeat itself. So this is what an exponential function looks like in a table. So in a table, you are not adding, you are multiplying by the same number repeatedly. Okay. And then what does this look like as a graph? Well, I'm just going to plot some of these points just so we can see what the graph looks like. 2, 9 is going to be a little hard for me to do, but I can kind of squeeze it on there. So I have 2, 9, 1, 3, 0, 1, -1, 1/3, -2, 1/9. And you can see that as we continue to go to the left, these numbers are getting really, really small and really, really close to 0. So when we talk about an exponential function, that's what it looks like. It's a curve. Okay, so it's not a line, it's a curve. And in this case, the curve is going up the page, so the curve is increasing. This is very important, not a line. Okay. All right, let's take a look at another example here. Okay, and yes, I know we don't like fractions, but we're going to look at one anyway. So from an equation, from a table, from a graph. Okay, so again, looking at this, if it's an exponential equation, the variable x is going to be in the exponent. So this would be exponential because x is in the exponent. Okay, and then we're going to take a look at this table and see what's going on here. And this one probably jumps out at you a little bit quicker. That 16 divided by 2 is 8. So we're doing this divide by 2 all the way down. And that might be contradictory to what we said above. In your mind, you might be thinking, well, we're not multiplying by the same number, we're dividing by the same number. Well, when we divide by 2, dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2 over and over again. So that's the same thing. Divide by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. So really we are multiplying. We're multiplying by a fraction. Okay, so again, we're multiplying by the same number over and over again, which is different than linear, because linear equations, we are adding the same number over and over again. This means we're multiplying if we have an exponential. Okay, and I'm going to sketch this graph as well. So we have -4 and 16 I can't fit, -3, 8 I can fit, -2, 4, -1, 2. So I can get some of these in here, 0, 1, 1.5, 2.25, and you can see. Okay, so this curve, while still a curve, looks a little different than the previous, okay? The previous one was going up the page. This one is going down the page, but it is still a curve nonetheless. So a graph of an exponential function is a curve, not a line. Okay, so tonight for homework, you are going to be looking at equations and tables, and you are going to be analyzing the table and analyzing the equation to see if it's exponential or not. So not every table on your homework is going to be exponential, but some of them will be, and you have to identify them by looking for a common multiplier. And then just remember, if the x is in the exponent, then it is exponential.